Hello, I'm James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News. Let's see your headlines. South Sudan indicts vice president for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Ghanaians debate President John Dramani Mahama's decision to accept U.S. deportees. Refugees raise alarm over rising hardships following aid cuts. South Sudan's first vice president, Riek Machar, has been charged with murder, treason, and crimes against humanity. The indictment deepens political tensions and raises fears of renewed conflict in the fragile nation.
Justice Minister Joseph Geng announced that South Sudan's Vice President Riek Machar faces charges over his alleged role in March attacks by the White Army militia against South Sudanese forces in Nasir, which killed hundreds, including a major general. International powers have urged Machar's release, warning that continued detention could reignite large-scale violence in the country. Government officials say the scale of the March assault highlights the militia's ties to senior opposition leaders, including Machar.
Evidence further suggests, actually reveals, that the White Army operated under the command and influence of certain leaders of the Sudan's People Liberation Movement Army in Opposition, SPLM-AIO, including Dr. Riek Machar through a coordinated military and political structures. The accused persons are as follows, and they are 8 in number. Number 1, Dr. Riek Machar were gone. So based on evidence, the following charges were prepared under South Sudan laws and applicable international laws. 1, murder. This is in accordance with Section 206, Penal Code Act 2008, in particular the killing of Major General David Major, 250 SSPDF soldiers and the UN personnel were discharged.
The trial will also involve 20 other accused, including former Petroleum Minister Puot Kang Chol. Civil society groups have called for a fair and transparent process, stressing that only credible justice can prevent another descent into war.
Ethiopia has inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, Africa's largest hydropower project, a move celebrated at home but viewed with concern in neighboring Egypt and Sudan. While the $5 billion project promises to transform Ethiopia's economy and power supply, it also raises questions about regional water security and cooperation. To help us unpack this development is Dr. Bihano Lenjinso, Member of Parliament and former State Minister on Irrigation Development. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me.
Now, Ethiopia has inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in the context of ambitions for energy generation and national development. What are the most immediate benefits Ethiopia expects for communities, industry, and power access? And what are the risks if everything does not go according to plan?
Thank you. By the way, it is the beginning of New Year in Ethiopia right now. And we consider the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam as a monumental gift for the Ethiopian people on the new year. We have a long list of reasons why we consider the dam as a monumental gift, but I think at least 3 are very crucial to mention here. The first one is, as you said, it is a hydro power dam. That means it generates electricity, and it is expected to double the current electricity capacity of Ethiopia. More than 50% of the Ethiopian population has no access to electricity. So the dam, the mega dam in Africa, is expected to ensure access for the Ethiopian people. That is the first and the foremost straightforward benefit of this dam, that it will power homes, it will power schools, health facilities, industries, and make life better in Ethiopia. The second most important benefit of this dam is that it will boost industrialization in Ethiopia, and it will move Ethiopia from agricultural dependent country to a more industry-led economy. This is because the surplus energy that we get from the dam will will give electricity, uninterrupted electricity for the industries, and that will attract more investment into the country. But also, the energy export, is one of the most anticipated benefit of this dam. As you may have heard on the inauguration, many neighboring countries has made a pledge that they will sign an agreement to take the surplus energy. So energy export is expected to be more than $1 billion annually, which will add to the Ethiopia's GDP. But GERD is not only about the structure, the concrete and the steels that support the structure and the water it holds. It is the symbolic meaning of GERD is far-reaching, and it is beyond the economy. As you may know, Ethiopia faced international financial limitation that we couldn't borrow from the financial institution. Therefore, Ethiopians were forced to contribute about $5 billion from their pocket to complete this dam. And doing that actually create awareness about how the geopolitical and the geostrategic maneuvering has been in our country. Contributing for this dam has created an amazing unity among Ethiopians, and now we consider it as a national pride. If there is anything significant as this project in Ethiopia, it is the Adwa Battle of the 1896, where Ethiopians successfully defended their country from colonial encroachment. So the symbolic value of the dam, the economic contribution, the access to electricity it will create is a very significant benefit of this project. Regarding the risk, well, there is no obvious risk as of now, but this is a mega project, and if anything goes wrong, we will lose the economic benefit. I just mentioned the fact that it is our national symbol. We need to really care about this project, and it may also cause damage on the downstream countries and structures on this river if it fails technically. But we don't have obvious anticipated risk at the moment, and we have to follow up to make sure that it operates as planned.
Now, neighboring Egypt and Sudan have raised concerns about water security, especially Sudan's Research Dam, located about 110 kilometers downstream of GERD, which could be affected by uncoordinated large water releases. From Ethiopia's perspective, how valid are these concerns?
Well, concern is that comes from downstream countries. Ethiopia take us as face values, and we look into it. Some of the concerns are actually valid concerns, especially issues related to water security, because countries like Egypt and Sudan heavily rely on the Nile water. So some of the concerns are legitimate, and Ethiopia is very happy and willing to look into it and to operate the dam in a cooperative manner, in a way that it benefits all riparian countries. But some of the concerns are also overstated, exaggerated, and they are basically stated to, make these historical claims sound legitimate on the international stages. Regarding Sudan's dam, for example, studies show, existing evidences show that flood has reduced in Sudan over the last few years after Ethiopia started to construct this dam and they start to fill the dam. That show that the dam actually has a positive effect over Sudan. And in the future, as I said, we need to follow up coordinated and evidence-based operation so that downstream countries are not going to be affected by heavy release. Uh, and I mean, the dam is not, when the dam holds water, it actually benefits the downstream countries by regulating releases. So that is not, I think, a valid concern, although they have the right to mention whatever they consider as concern. So Ethiopia will look into all these issues in cooperation with downstream countries to make sure that heavy releases are not going to damage downstream dams.
Now, officials from Egypt and Sudan did not attend the inauguration of the GERD, raising fears of tension in the region. How effective has diplomacy been so far in resolving these tensions? In your opinion, sir, what are the main sticking points preventing the comprehensive agreement among the Nile Basin countries?
Well, thank you very much. I think diplomacy on River Nile and other waters in the Horn of Africa have a very long history. I mean, Ethiopia has been a battlefield of geostrategic actors for the last century or more than that. So we don't think this is an easy issue for these countries who have been having a veto like control over the Nile water. Ethiopia and Egypt has issues for centuries related to the Nile River. When it comes to GERD, I think there is a very fertile ground for all riparian countries to come to terms or to develop a win-win solution, like cooperative framework agreements that Ethiopia and many other riparian countries endorse. But the main issue, the main problem, I think, emanates from Egypt's perspective and Egypt's position on Nile. Egypt had a veto-like control over the Nile water based on colonial treaties, very old colonial treaties. So they have been exercising hydro hegemony over Nile, and they don't want to lose that. President Museveni stated this a few months ago that countries, riparian countries, should look into a new way of, sharing this resource rather than sticking to the historical claims. Egypt still want to maintain these colonial treaties that unfairly gave her veto power over this water. There are a lot of hypocrisies here. Like, for example, Egypt contributes no drop of water into the Nile, but Egypt want to continue to hold all the cards on Nile. Ethiopia, who contributes about 85% of the Nile water, has no any right in those treaties to use its sovereign resources. So this is unfair, and we are not going to follow these rules anymore. That is what Ethiopia is saying. And Ethiopia endorsed a cooperative framework agreement that many riparian countries signed. Egypt rejected it. But Egypt labeled any activity that Ethiopia engaged in as unilateral, whereas Egypt actually claimed for water hydro hegemony and that colonial legacy endorsed veto control over the Nile water. Interests in those outdated colonial legacies.
Well, because of time, we have to cut this interview short. Thank you very much for your time and insight, sir.
Thank you very much for having me again, James.
Ghanaians are split over President John Dramani Mahama's decision to accept deportees from the United States. The move is being hailed by some as Pan-African solidarity, while others fear economic strain.
President John Dramani Mahama confirmed 14 West African deportees arrived in Ghana this week. Supporters cite Pan-African ideals, while critics worry about job competition and social strains as more are expected.
We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals.
Ghana agreed to accept deportees as part of broader cooperation with Washington. Supporters say Ghana is continuing a tradition rooted in Kwame Nkrumah's Pan-African vision.
Ghana, this is the genesis of Pan-African. Nkrumah did everything. So it's a good idea to have them. Just that we have some consequences, some prices to pay, and that is normal. But to receive West African nationals in Ghana is...
And also before this decision, we can find all the African nationality here. So these people can increase Ghana, the economic of Ghana, and also these people have knowledge about what they do over there. They can come and apply it in our country. They can increase our the economic and development.
However, critics say the decision will have negative economic consequences.
The idea of our President John Dramani Mahama receiving these deportees, on the contrary, is going to be a big headache to the Ghanaian economy, because we do not know who these people are and what they are up to in America that they will be deported to here. So for me, I strongly disagree with His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and I don't want them to come. Everyone should go to their various countries in order to start to rebuild their future. When they come to Ghana...
More deportees are expected to arrive in the months ahead, intensifying debate over how Ghana balances economic pressures with its long-standing Pan-African commitments. The outcome could shape regional perceptions of solidarity and integration.
At Malawi's overcrowded Zeleka refugee camp, thousands face deepening hunger and service cuts as United Nations funding collapses. Aid workers and refugees warn that shortages of food, medicine and protection services are already pushing vulnerable families towards catastrophe.
Malawi's Zeleka refugee camp, built for 10,000 people and now sheltering about 57,000, faces severe cuts as UNHCR has received only 18% of its needed $26.3 million for 2025. Food rations are halved, medical supplies depleted, and services suspended, leaving thousands vulnerable to violence, exploitation and hunger. Refugees say they are desperate and fear for their children.
We have always relied on the support from them. Now when they go, how shall I find food? How will I raise these children? We have nothing to lean on. I can hardly afford to keep and raise these children alone with no support. I wish this decision was reversed because we will die.
Now that the assistance and funding is going to be cut, we, the refugees, will be in more problems. It is like throwing us in a pit while alive waiting for death.
UNHCR officials say life-saving aid is being prioritised amid the shortfall.
The US government was one of our biggest donors, and it's such been a blow to us. This year, we had a budget of 26 million, and only 17% of that has been received. So we are talking about slightly above $4 million that has been received. Of course, this is as a result of the global funding situation that is out there that you might be aware of, but also it's linked to the US funding.
The funding crisis at Dzaleka is expected to intensify next year if donor commitments remain unmet. Aid groups warn that food shortages, limited healthcare, and rising insecurity could worsen, leaving tens of thousands of refugees with little chance of survival.
In Nairobi, running is stepping beyond Olympic glory. A grassroots club called We Run Nairobi is bringing residents together 3 times a week using sports to build health, connection, and community.
Kenya's reputation for running is often tied to elite athletes and Olympic medals. But now that legacy is being reimagined in Nairobi. A group of more than 250 residents gather in the city's traffic-free streets every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday for a quiet, early morning run to build a community. The club We Run Nairobi was started by lawyer and marathon runner Emily Chepkor.
I just wanted it to be so community forward that you're coming out because the neighborhood is out, and then we'll move together for a bit, right? So I wanted to make the distance super light. I wanted to make our starting time quite light. I know people still think it's early, but I wanted it to start like, you know, a little later in the day, so you could comfortably like get up, come out, and, you know, run or walk a 5K. And I wanted that to be energy, like really accessible, very, very beginner friendly.
The runs are about 3 or 6 miles long and see a mix of regulars and newcomers. They meet in different locations in the city, including at the Karura and Arboretum forests, as well as the tea farms of Tigoni on the outskirts. There's no registration, fee, or gatekeeping, just a banner with a starting line. Supit Sambayon, a participant, says the club helps him look after his mental health.
You're not in your space anymore, you're out there with people. You're interacting with people, you're training, or running with people, and this has really helped my mental health. Because in that space, I get community support.
After the run, people often hang back to stretch, talk, or sit together, and in those moments, the club becomes more than a running group.
Well, that's all we have today in Africa News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.